Welcome to Venator Chronicles Podcast. I'm Ethan Taylor.
And I'm Dustin Jelly.
Our hope is to inspire new and old hunters alike.
We hope you can join us on this journey of lessons that we have, are, and will learn through the world of hunting.
We are back.
Back again.
Hey, Seth.
Guess who's back?
Just like that. You're going to drop it on me again, huh?
Yep.
Oh,
hey,
yeah.
Seth. We're coming in hot. You're coming in ice cold.
Well,
Ice
sorta.
cold as always. Thank you again, guys.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
So good. It's been too long for all of us,
long.
I think.
And tonight almost didn't even happen.
Yep, that's true.
After we locked the office with the keys inside the office, and we
Oh.
weren't inside the office.
It was bad. We had to MacGyver it almost.
We did.
Yeah. I had someone driving in from like 30 minutes away to bring keys to the office.
I suggested we just bust down the window, but
Yeah.
that got quickly vetoed.
Pretty expensive windows, I think. Guys, all right. So last time we were together, we were talking about our opener, and a lot has
Yes.
happened since then. Is that fair to say?
Fair enough.
No dead deer yet, though.
No
we'll
dead
just
deer.
put that out there early.
Oh, man.
By
Well, I'm
choice.
gonna say
I
if
mean,
any-
we've all had giant bucks in
The
front of
listener
us, but
arc
you're
is
not
just going to
gonna-
drop.
Yeah, I feel like if anybody's listening at this point, they already know that no deer have
Dude,
been taken.
we're not going to shoot the first booners that walk by.
Yeah, that's a
I
good
mean,
point.
Let's be real.
Totally, I've passed up
It's about
on.
the chase.
I've passed
you
up
know?
on so many that I've lost count.
Oh, have you,
Forget
Dusty?
Yeah,
Oh, so many.
just oodles and oodles of booners walking by.
That's so bad. Okay.
Dude.
Where
okay,
do,
no.
Yeah,
no.
where do we start
But
right
for
now?
real, yeah. I want to start. Where's your mind's at? Like, mentally, are you like, gosh, it feels like I gotta kill one now, or it feels like the end of season, or like you're running out of time, or you need more spots, or you want like 100 more trail cameras? Like,
Oh,
where's
yeah.
everybody's minds at? Like, Ethan and
I-
Dusty, answer it.
I fluctuate as I'm sitting up in the tree stand. I go from I'm gonna wait for that target buck I have to I'll take that spiker that walks by any moment now. I'm all over the place.
I'd say for me at the moment, so I did pass on a spike buck the other night, and for me, like, I really just want to get the meat monkey off my back. That's what I'm going to call it, the meat
The
monkey.
meat monkey.
Because then I can really not have to have the internal like strife of like, oh, do I just fill the freezer now, or is this going to be like later in the season? I'll just take whatever, like,
Well,
and then
you
spots.
guys are lucky though.
say
You
spots.
guys get doe tags.
Yeah, that's
We
true.
do, yeah.
We didn't even realize you didn't get doe tags till recently.
Yeah, that
Well,
really sucks.
Think of this. I get to loose one arrow at a deer all year.
You could lose two.
I mean, like in Dusty's case, I mean, you could lose several, but you know what I mean?
True.
Like, I get one deer tag all year, I mean,
Oh.
this year I did get a rifle tag, which is cool,
That's
but
yeah. I'm pretty sure you were mentioning how unreal that one is.
Now we all realize why.
What?
Oh, I didn't realize. Like when you
Oh,
said rifle tag at first, I'm like, yeah, what's the big deal? Like,
Yeah.
Anybody
Well,
can
I was
have
so
it, yeah.
confused. Like things started really clicking for me, Seth, after I realized. And by realized, you told me that you didn't have doe tags, and I never thought to ask. But I was always like, man, why don't they
Well,
kill some
just
does
knock off
ever?
some does.
It's always these
well,
chasing
there's doe
inches.
tags, but here's the deal about out here. You have to draw for everything. You have to draw for a doe tag. You have to draw see, with a bow tag, you get a choice of a mule deer buck, a mule deer doe, or a whitetail buck or whitetail doe with a bow. And then if you want to draw a rifle tag, you either put in for a buck for a certain unit or whatever, and then you can put in for a doe if you don't get a buck tag. But if you go by preference points, like you would like bear hunting in Wisconsin or whatever.
Yeah.
So if you get a doe tag, I believe you lose your preference points. So who's putting in for a doe tag? Like nobody.
For real? You lose your
Not I.
preference points? Jeez.
Yeah, so I love the system just because everything lives except for, the few that get shot with a rifle, and then, the ones.
How long are
I
they going to
got
do it
bait
that way
piles.
though? That's weird.
So, but I mean, there's no place for there's not a lot of places, I should say, for deer to hide.
Yeah.
Like the big deer, they seem to survive because they can hide just anywhere, and the only thing people hunt is either a bait pile or
Or they take off right as you're about to shoot them.
Who does what? No. Oh, I see what you did there.
Yeah,
Oh.
that was specific.
Yeah.
I didn't mean anything by it. I was just
It is.
throwing out an
I mean,
example.
since you asked the question, it is really nice to have them in front of me, though. I mean, to be
So-
able to get on them like that is
Bird.
pretty neat.
Definitely not a shot at Dusty
No,
or
not
me
at all.
for that
No.
matter.
But yeah, dude, my mindset right now is a little up in the air because
Yeah.
I hate to say it because I feel a little like a failure, but the biggest buck I had on camera last year has not showed up yet.
Mm.
So, and my wife is downstairs.
So you have like no visuals.
I get this look. I can't talk in front of her on a podcast. I can't.
Oh man.
She makes me feel foolish. I mean, she's not trying to make me feel foolish, but every time I like pick up the phone and like you're texting me, I got some smirk on my face, and then she gives me like a oh, you look so dumb with that smirk on your face. So now I'm talking on the
Which is
phone.
your like permanent smirk now.
Okay, bye, honey. Love you. Go away. Dude, good night.
I don't know. We should
Bye.
probably just add her to the podcast at some
We
point.
should. I think we.
No,
I think we need to
not
have
tonight.
once she shoots one.
Yeah, she'll
need
tag
a-
up before
yeah.
all of us.
Yeah, probably. So
Yeah.
so
Where
I want.
was I?
You were talking about your mindset, where you're at, and
You said
how-
you're all over the place.
Yeah, you're all over the place.
Well, not all over the place, but here's the thing. It's like, so I found, I'm not going to say another target buck, but, I found another big buck. And I told you guys about that story or whatever.
You didn't tell everybody
But-
else about
Yeah,
that
you
story.
haven't told anybody else. So.
Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah, if it's not recorded, it's not even. Did it even happen?
Yeah.
dude, do it.
Not
Okay,
official until
I'll tell it.
comes
I'll tell
out on
it
a
quickly.
podcast. Yes.
Yeah. Go briefly.
Anyway, so I'll do it briefly because you can only tell a story so many times.
Before
But
you start
anyway,
crying.
the wife and I, we go out hunting as we do from time to time, and we're hunting the edge of a bean field, and we walked probably about a mile and a quarter, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we're coming up to the edge of this field, and we were gonna hunt on the ground. So, anyways, we had to kind of crawl up to the edge of this field because all the bedding and stuff, they could see you walk to the edge of it if you're gonna hunt it.
Yeah.
So the only place that we thought we could connect on a deer is if we got to the edge of that field, and it's a little sketchy getting up there. So I mean, we're like belly crawling across a wheat field with a little row of grass just covering our backs.
Oh man, that's my
And then-
dream hunting right there.
Dude, it's fun, especially with your wife.
Dusty's
anyways.
trying to make it Western over here. Continue.
Dude. So we get to this little bush, right? And the mosquitoes are terrible. I just have to add that because it really is one of the most terrible experiences of your life. when
I'll just
you-
verify I did at least see what you're talking about through some pictures. And
Yeah.
videos. It
Yeah.
was pretty
Yeah.
nasty.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty. But
Every
I
square
can't stand
inch.
to wear those mosquito nets. So what happened is we got in that bush scenario, and we're probably about off of the field. We're about 45 yards. So they're going to either have to walk past us to the west through the wheat, and we'll shoot them, or we'll have to catch them coming from the east from bedding to the field. So we're set up on the northeast corner of the field. I was thinking sometime we should do like a podcast with when
a
it's
visual.
necessary with a visual, because there's so many different scenarios, and like we all love maps. So I mean, we could even get like an erase board and so you can just go nuts, right?
Oh jeez.
Anyway,
That
dry
would be a
erase board.
blast.
That would be
It
pretty
a
dope.
blast. We Dan Enfold that sucker. Anyways,
It's like
so we're in this bush and we're having a great time with these mosquitoes. We're just hanging out, just not miserable at all. And so we're sitting there, and so we see, we see one buck up in the middle of the field, then we see another one, then we see another one, and another one. And about, I don't know, an hour before shooting light, there's 6 bucks in the field, 3 of which are pretty small.
Just
One
six.
No biggie.
What?
Yeah.
No biggie.
Not a big deal.
Anyway, yeah, and
We-
so yeah,
Between-
and my wife is
Between
looking
you
at
is
him
so
going,
bad.
oh, I don't think I'd shoot any of those, and I'm like, yeah, they're decent, but whatever.
Okay,
And
so
of
so
course,
let's
What?
define real quick. When you say decent, how big?
okay, I decent. I mean, they're Pope and Young, 120, well, one probably two were probably 130s, 130 to
A
135,
measly
whatever.
130, 135. No biggie.
Just little guys.
And then the other ones are smaller. Anyways, so they're out there and they're 200 yards out there, and so it's not like they're feeding our way some. They ended up about 90 yards away, roughly 80, 90 yards, and then they just kind of meandered back the other direction off the field. So that was cool. And it was kind of like last light. It was probably 20 minutes of shooting light left. And it's getting dusky, and I'm outside of the bush, but the bush is to my back. And so I'm not silhouetted or anything, but I kind of want to get a little lay of the land. So I stand up, right?
Yep.
Mhm.
And I'm just glassing to see the field a little better. And I'm looking around at, kind of back at the bedding. And I know that these deer come from the east, and I only saw one buck come from the east. So I'm just glassing around, see what there is. Well, Emily goes, there's a doe right behind you. And I'm like, okay, it's a doe. We've been looking at bucks all night. Like, okay, there's a doe, 20 minutes of shooting light left. I don't really care if there's a doe. And so she's like, no, it's right there. And so I kind of turn to the left a little, which would be east, and I look, and this doe has like this shiny beam on one side, and there's this big shiny beam on the other side. And I look, and I'm like, that's not a doe. That's a giant buck. And dude, at this point, it's like 80 yards away. And she's like, yeah, I said deer, not doe. And I'm like, okay, just don't move. And this thing's like walking. When it's 80 yards away and it's like 40 yards south of you, it almost looks like it's walking right at you, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I kind of crouched down a little bit instead of standing straight up. And so I'm like grabbing for my bow, and I can't get my stinking trigger release in my D-loop because I'm, super not nervous.
Well, and this one, and to be
calm.
clear,
I'm calm, stone cold.
and to be clear,
Not
this
a
one,
problem.
this one is a touch bigger than the 130s you were talking about earlier.
Oh gosh, this is a 180 plus inch deer, which I didn't know until. I'm not exaggerating on this.
No,
one. This
I know.
is
Yeah,
the
you're
biggest
pretty
deer I've ever
conservative
seen
usually.
on the hoof. So he's walking, and he gets to like 45 yards, and he stops. And I've got my bow in front of me, and I'm just looking at him, still crouched. I'm looking at him, and he's looking straight over to the bush. And then he just turns, puts his head down, walks a few more steps. So when he walks a few more steps, he stops and he looks back over at the bush. And he doesn't head bob or nothing. He's just whatever. And so then he continues to walk like 2 steps. And now about 10 yards from where he is, he would be jumping over a fence into a field. Well, there's a berm right in between, just in the corner, only about 20 yards wide, but there's a berm in between me and the field. So if he jumps that fence, he's gone. And it's way too still and way too quiet to like sneak up to the berm and try to get a shot. So he puts his head back down one more time, and I draw back. Oh, I did range him at 37 yards. Right before I drew back, I was ranging him. And I got him at 37 yards, broadside. And he puts his head down. And as soon as he puts his head down the second time, I stand up and I draw at the same time as I'm standing up. I've got my peep immediately lined up, and I've got my pin on him. And as soon as I go to squeeze that trigger, like at the same time, the bottom cam on my bow just barely hit just this little, it wasn't even brush. It was just this little thing with some leaves on it right in front of me. So when I stood up, he heard that. So he turned and looked, and as he looked at me, he started to turn his body away. And I was just about to squeeze one off on him. I had it on his chest cavity, and I'm like about to squeeze one off, and as he turns, I didn't.
Oh no.
Dude, I'm talking world class deer.
Oh
This
my
is like
gosh.
something out of Field and Stream. It was so cool. Anyways, so thinking he runs off 80 yards, 80 to 100 yards, and stops, and then kind of looks back, and then walks probably 200 yards, 150 yards away, and now he's skylined walking, and he just proceeds to walk up to the field, right?
Oh my
Well,
gosh.
I'm like, Emily, get up here, like get your binoculars, and you got to see this thing. She's like, no, I don't want to spook him. And I'm like, I literally told her, I was like, you will probably never see another deer like this in the wild, and maybe neither will I. I was like, you
Oh, my
need to see this
goodness.
deer. And so she stands up right by me, and it's pretty dusky. So I'm not thinking like, oh, he's going to see us, because his head was toward the field and whatever.
Yeah.
But then he would look our way. But I wasn't worried about getting busted or nothing. It was pretty dusky at this point now that
Yeah.
he's walking up.
Yeah.
And he literally skylined, and he turns his head, and she's like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, no, that is, he is
Oh, my
probably,
gosh.
he was about, and this is no exaggeration, he was about 6 inches probably, maybe 4 to 6 inches past either ear. And just, I don't know how many points he had, but he was at least, 6x6, 12 point or whatever. But he just looks over, and it just is like, it was such a stinking, the most bittersweet moment ever, because it was the coolest thing to have the biggest deer of your life in front of you, and then the worst thing in the world to watch him run away. So at one point you feel just like terrible, because usually like when I draw back, I'm already dragging the deer out. Like in my mind, I'm like, done deal. If I like pull, but really, I mean, think about it. How many times you draw back on a deer and you don't loose an arrow? It's been, I don't know how many years since I've drawn back on a deer and not shot an arrow and killed it. And that it's just the way that it's gone, whatever. So when I draw back on that thing, my mind never went there, and I'm so glad it didn't, because it would have been worse. Anyways, and I'm watching that thing walk away, and it was like the coolest thing that I've ever experienced, and the worst thing I've ever experienced. But it was like, it was so awesome that I'm glad I didn't shoot and like graze him or hit him or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I still feel like I'm in the game, because he didn't know what we were. He didn't run away. He ran like 150 yards and went up in the field. I know, not for a fact, but I'm pretty dang sure, whether it's by just staying alive instinct or curiosity, that deer walked off that field, went over to that bush, and smelled that there was humans there.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that would push him out of the area.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen him walk out of that same bedding that he came out of, because I had seen him 2 days before come up out of the bedding that he walked straight out of that night. I seen him 2 days before come up out of there, but I didn't know how big he was. I just knew it was a giant deer that came out of there.
Yeah.
And that bachelor group was in the field, and there was one lone buck that came up, and it was massive. If he was black, I would have thought he would have been a cow. Like, he was just he was a massive bodied deer,
Man.
but he came out like 15 to 20 minutes before shooting light. And when you're glassing from a really far distance, I couldn't see his rack. I just knew he was a giant.
Yep.
So when I got to that field, I wasn't even specifically hunting him, because I didn't know what he was. I just knew that a deer traveled there, and I knew that there would be deer in the field that I might get a shot at.
Nice.
So long story short, it's like we're walking out, and it's just like this mix of emotion. And I'm just like, well, really, like the last time I drew back on a legitimately big buck and I didn't shoot him, I basically hung it up for the season almost, because it was just in my mind, on the deer prior to this one, that I had done that, and that was like maybe 10 years ago.
Jeez.
I was already celebrating with my buddies. I was already like dragging it out, and we were already, celebrating, right?
Yeah.
Well, with this one, my mind never got there, so I never had to experience like the rewind it and unfeel those like highs, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
You didn't have the
like
same
when I'm
low as you
yep,
normally would.
yep. So like when I'm walking out, I'm like I'm going to that place in my mind where I'm going, you know what? I am going to think about it. So what I did is I went, okay, rationally. Oh, all right. He's laying on the ground. His head's propped up several inches off the ground because his rack is so big, and I'm walking up to him. And I'm going, I just need to think about that. Okay, that's painful. And then I went, and then I just went to the opposite end. I was like, that was the coolest thing I've ever experienced. And I'm talking this through with my wife. Like I'm like talking to her. Like I was like, I am so all over the place right now because I should be so far in the dumps, but I was like, for some reason I'm not there, and that was the biggest deer I've ever seen, you know.
Yeah.
But I just kept going. What a cool thing it was! Like how cool! I was there with her. She saw him first. He came in. I got drawn back. I didn't make a stupid decision to pull the trigger when I shouldn't pull the trigger. I didn't fling an arrow at 80, 90 yards when he stops, you know. So I made good decisions, and we set up in the right spot. It just didn't work out how we wanted it to.
Dude,
but
literally,
what an absolute honor to be like within 40 yards of that buck. I was like, ah. So
well,
anyways,
yeah, that it's crazy how like just a couple seconds is all it takes. The difference between it ending well or it going the opposite of what you hope. Like literally, you can have hours and hours into a hunt, and then obviously you can have a whole year into a hunt or 3 years into a hunt, and then you're literally drawn back, and it's like if it waits 2 more seconds, it's dead. If it doesn't,
1 second,
then it's gone.
1
Yeah.
second. I was squeezing
man.
that trigger, and
That's
I
rough.
literally had my peep and my sights on him, and he was turning as I was squeezing, and I had to make a split-second decision whether I was pulling that trigger or not, and I just ended up not. And I don't remember it being a conscious decision. I just knew that he was turning, and I had Brown in there, and I had his body.
Yeah.
I just know that his body was turning out of it.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have ended well.
That's crazy.
But I didn't think about it. It just happened.
Yeah.
You know, so it wasn't like I was, you know, making some big ethical decision. It just was like, it just happened.
Well,
I just wasn't going to do it.
Well, and I'll share my story too with the one full draw experience I've had so far where I was actually planning on shooting an animal. So I went out. It was Monday morning. I started a little bit later than my other days in the rest of the week, and I had till about 8 o'clock or so, 8:30 or whatever, where I could be out in the woods. And so I was like, well, I'm just gonna. The wind's right. I'm gonna go walk this old ski trail where I had spooked some does bedding in a prior visit out there before the season started. So it had rained the night before, and the wind was in my face. And because of like the rain from the night before, like, and the wind, it was covered. Like all my steps were as quiet. Yeah, they're all as quiet as was at least in sync with like how loud the rain was when that was hitting the ground, the floor, or other the foliage. And so I was walking back, and the bedding was probably like 150, 200 yards. From where I started walking in, but I just was like, you know what? I know they're going to be bedding on either side of this trail somewhere. I just don't know where yet. And so I just treated the whole time I was out there as if every step basically counted, whether it was like a good, a quiet step or not. And so I was going back there, and I got out there before first light, and I was basically walking out there for the first like 15, 20 minutes. And it was basically, I should have, it could have been using a flashlight, but I was kind of like I said, an old ski trail. And, and I got back there. I got about probably 75 yards, 80 yards back, and that probably took me 45 minutes at least. And I was getting back there, and I took a step, and I would, wait for a little bit and take a couple steps, wait, and then I just try to glass whatever I could, even though it's kind of hardwoods on either side. And I was sitting in this one spot, and I think I was probably close to 100 yards back or so, and I hear this. I'm like, no. And I look to my right, and there's these deer. So they didn't wind me. They must have seen me. And but I was moving like super slow. And so they got up, and it was thick enough that I couldn't see like them clearly. I could just kind of see them walking around a little bit. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm going to just grunt because I'm experimenting a little bit. Like when a deer blows at you, I'll like grunt or I'll even like snort wheeze or whatever. And they like, as I kept going down this trail, they weren't like leaving or going really far away at all. They were only moving like 20 yards. And then they'd stop and just hang out. And so I was just like, all right, well, I'm just going to keep walking slowly because I was planning on going pretty far back. And so I kept going, and I kept seeing the deer. I kept hearing them, and they, you know, from what I could tell, basically took off. And so I had about like 50 yards where I didn't see anything, didn't hear anything, and I was still inching my way forward. And imagine two trees kind of creating a V, and I had taken one step forward, and I had heard this just like. Not quite like a hand, but like a thud on the ground. And I looked in between these two trees, and there's a doe. You know how they like thud their hoof on the ground?
Oh yeah, they stomped.
Yep, they stomped. And so then all I did was I took like a half step back to put it hid the doe's head, and then all I could see was the vitals. And what was interesting is the thought of Bowfest came to mind on that 40. Gosh. No, I'm serious. That 40 some yard shot on the bear.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's the first thing that came to mind. It's like, okay, I know I can make the shot on the vitals. And so, I started trying to range, and I'm like trying to get in between the trees and steady enough. And this probably all transpired in like 15 to 25 seconds. So ranging, it's like 32, you know, bounce off the trees. And then finally it's like 39, 40. I'm like, okay, 40. And so I draw the bow back. And like right as I'm settling into the shot, and like nothing about like punching the trigger, like all it was like, okay, settle into the shot, actually get comfortable with it. Yeah. Because I was like, I'm going to hit the tree if I rush anything. I know I will, because I did that a lot at Bowfest too. So I was like, all right. And as I was settling in, as I was starting to pull through, like I was probably like 50% of the way through, and the deer like turned and ran off. But like for me, kind of like you were saying, Seth, where it's like there wasn't like this ethical decision. It was just, here's my process. This is how long it takes me to go through my process. If the deer's not there, if it's not a good shot anymore, I'm just going to stop.
I got a tip.
Yeah.
Don't start your process with hitting a bush with your bow, because my process included that and it didn't end well. So just for anybody out there that
and don't
develop a process.
Yeah, and don't start your process with being seen first.
Right.
And then trying to hide and draw.
What you need is an alert deer to hone your skills on.
Yeah, yeah.
So
that
you're going to either want to be seen or heard or smelt. I mean, one of the three is
well, I mean,
best for that.
According to what I learned last episode in talking with you, Seth, that if I don't see any deer, I must therefore be hunting really
I am not
well.
Explaining that to you again. No way, dude.
Because at this point, like,
you want
I
to know
am
what?
a top
the very next
level
hunt,
hunter.
I saw a deer in that same spot, and it was a bad thing.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah. But seriously, it wasn't great. But it seems like we're all doing a bit of ground hunting, like. And for me, that's foreign. And I think for both of you, that's a little foreign, ain't it? Or maybe not
for
Dusty.
Me. No.
He's trad.
Is that what you did for your first 3 years?
I'm also scared of heights. So
that's his other motivation.
Yeah, like when people talk about, like, talking with buddies and hearing one buddy at church today was like, oh, yeah, 18 feet's like my starting point. I usually like to be higher. I'm like, 18 feet's probably my max. I'm more comfortable around 12.
Yeah, no, I like getting it like literally as high as I can.
Like
I go until the tree doesn't allow me. Like it's either I didn't set my climber up at a steep enough angle at the bottom, or I run into branches and it's like, all right, now I have to stop. Because I don't know. For me, I feel like the higher you get, the better chance you have of being. I mean, not in all cases.
Of
like
dying.
You do have to use some judgment call.
Yeah.
But I'm not talking about like death. I got my safety line on, but I'm talking about like
this year.
Hey now, but
so
I don't know.
Ground hunting. I want to hear.
Here we go.
Yeah, ground hunting, because obviously, like you said, Seth, this is new for you. And you've done some ground hunting, Ethan?
I have. Yeah.
How is that compared for you guys
Dude, I
compared
wrote
to,
a list.
ooh,
I
he's got a list.
nerded out on pros and cons to
Oh,
stand hunting versus ground hunting because I was trying to figure out how, because I've lived out here for 5 years. So how am I all of a sudden I never want to get in a tree? So
Yeah.
I wrote down like my reasoning because it seemed like such a good idea before to always be in a tree and always have that upper hand.
Yeah.
And honestly, it comes from this year's experience and maybe like a few years ago when I shot my first buck on the ground, that experience. So basically, this is what I came up with. So here's I'll just give you the list, however nerdy it is.
lay it
Okay.
on us.
So here is the deal. This is why I hunt on the ground. Okay. So when I hunt on the ground, I feel like I can get in absolutely 100% clean. And when you have the right wind direction, you know the general bedding of the deer you're after, or a general vicinity of where the deer bed.
Yeah.
Because like if you come in on the edge of a cut field, right? They're not in the cut field, right? So if you have a wind coming out of the woods blowing toward the cut field, and that wind's coming out of the woods that drops off down into a valley, and your wind's blowing out into that field, you can pretty safely say that they're not catching your wind, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So say it's pretty brushy. You can pretty safely say they're not seeing you, right?
Yep.
So like when I'm thinking mobile, like I told that story last time of getting in on that buck, right?
Yeah.
And if I would have tried to put up a stand, or if I would have tried to get in a tree or trim a tree or anything like that, I would have blown that area out. I know I would have. It was too still. I mean, when I was barely moving at all, I mean, everything was crunching, right?
Yeah.
So one of the reasons that like I'm loving ground hunting right now is I feel like I can get in so clean. I don't have to like, I try not to clank a stand or just even rubbing on a tree. Like I feel like I'm getting in to these spots with almost zero disturbance.
Nice.
So now it's like when I put a stand on my back and like I'm gonna go out to something, I just envision like I have to be able to shoot out of a tree, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not like going to like preset trees like I used to, and I'm not going to like preset stands. I'm going in like I want to be in there. This is my first time in there. I haven't put scent in there. I haven't done anything like that. I'm going in, and these deer are going to be doing exactly what they were doing yesterday or the day before or whatever, and they're going to hopefully walk right by me, right?
Yeah.
So like one of the pros is getting in like clean like that, you can move. Like I've set up in different spots that have good deer travel with a good wind, but if I see like some deer movement or something happening in another spot, like I have the ability to like get over to that spot if that's what I want to do.
You just go there.
I just go. No, that's why. Like, okay, so the other day I was set up on the edge of a bean field on a tree row, and I set up specifically so these bucks, they walk straight through the middle of a bean field, straight to a cut wheat field, over to this bedding area, right?
Yeah.
There's literally no way to shoot these deer because they have got 150 yards on either side of them for a buffer, right? Mm-hmm. So the only way when they're walking through the middle of that field, on either side of that field, there's like probably 1.5 to 2 foot of grass, right?
Okay.
So I set up on the trees on the west side of that field. And I decided when they are going to walk through the middle of the field like they usually do, I'm going to crawl down that grass line and I'm going to get a shot at them if it's the buck I want. And it worked. Like I sat up there, deer came out to the field. Those bucks were in a position where nobody with a bow could shoot them at 150 yards. And then they proceeded to go right down the middle of that field. And I crawled down the edge of that field on that grass line, and I stopped short because once I got there, I didn't want to shoot the bucks that they were, but I stopped short there, and I glassed them, got a really good look at them, decided it wasn't a deer I wanted to shoot, and they walked exactly out that trail, exactly out there. If I would have been in a stand, when you put up a stand, you feel an obligation to use it. That's one of the other things. Like, if you're going to set a stand, trim a tree, put up a ladder, put up pegs, put up whatever. I mean, doesn't everybody feel like an obligation that that stand has to get used?
Yeah.
Like, if you're on the ground, you have no obligation. You have no ties to that spot unless there's deer there that you want to kill.
Yeah.
So, like, one of the nice things about ground hunting too is I don't get married to a spot. If I walk in and sneak up and make a little, I have a stool in my backpack, and that's what I use for my stand. And so, like, just staying mobile, and it's fun. Like, honestly, it's just way more fun too.
Well, I feel like too, though, if you had to compare like North Dakota and here where we're at, and obviously you've hunted here a lot of years, that's what's tough though, is like, as much as that is as much fun as that is, like, this is my perception, so totally correct me if I'm off here, but it seems like there's like the vast majority of the areas where they're not going to be. And then you have pockets of maybe complex ridges and coulees and all that stuff where you have like an actual objective and a place to go. And you have visibility leading up to that spot. And so it leads to you having to crawl or be really careful on your entry. But at least it's like you said, like up 1.5 feet of grass, and then like you can see so much. Whereas like here, as much fun as it is, it's like it is hard. It is like mentally so grueling when it's like, all right, I'm gonna go walk around and this, and it's like you're walking through the woods and it's like, oh my gosh, this is to stay quiet takes so much energy, and you have no idea if they're 400 yards away because you can't see
40.
more than 20 yards.
Yep.
And I've had multiple occasions now where I've had deer within 20 yards where I wouldn't even have a shot, even if I saw them first.
Yeah, and one of the things is
it's like all that work.
This is not no. One of the things is I wouldn't recommend doing this. The reason I hunt this way here is because of my terrain.
Yeah.
The whole reason
it makes sense.
Do what I'm doing is because it makes sense. If I went to Wisconsin, I'm not going to hunt like this. I'm going to get in a tree.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you need to be in a tree. You need your scent higher because you don't know where the deer are. But once you figure out, like out here, since it's open and I'm watching deer and like I'm need to get in position for deer, yeah, absolutely. Like, yeah, no, this, I would never say, oh, it's so much funner, so you need to do it in the woods. No, that would be dumb.
Yeah.
I think out in this scenario, oh heck yeah, like I'm almost done with trees except for maybe some sits.
I think I had that reality just kind of kick in tonight when I was sitting out tonight, and just the sad reality that this is where I'm at. I'm at Minnesota where I can't go spot and stock at all. Yeah. I mean, and so I have to get up into the trees so I can actually see. And I don't know. There's part of me that was really sad inside, like a small child that
just
had life let him down.
Well, and it's funny too, because like Dustin and I are looking at trying to set up a couple-day trip where him and I are going to go out, and you know where it is in the Schwamigan Forest, Seth, where it's all that open area.
Sure,
it's all clear cut and stuff, but it's like really walkable, and it is grass and big rolling hills, and you can see a really long ways. That's where we're going because we want to get a taste of hunting the way we both find super exhilarating.
Yes,
and we know opportunities there, but it's I'm anywhere else. That's the only place I know around here.
I'm totally going out to North Dakota next year, and I'm going to go with Seth. So I don't know if Seth knows that, but I'm coming out. And
yes.
Yeah. You're gonna need an invite for that one. We'll see if
I'm just
happens.
Showing up at your door, and I'm not gonna leave till you say yes.
Almost for the ball.
Almost for the ball.
Oh, kids these days.
He's like begging is not below me.
Yeah. Anyway,
okay, maybe I'll have your wife take me because she seems to know how to hunt.
She's got it figured out.
Yeah, better than I do.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, so like as far as ground hunting goes, yeah, it works for me and it works out here, but obviously it's not for every spot. But this year, yeah, that's been the game. And
nice.
you really do get, when you're not setting up a stand and taking down a stand and setting up a stand and taking down a stand, I believe too, you really do get more sits out of the same area. I've hunted the same area, never like kind of the same spot, but the same area according to different winds.
Yeah.
And these deer are not caught on to me yet. And I think part of it is when I get in and out of there, I'm trying to move in and out on spots that they're not traveling as much.
Okay.
So I travel like an open field that usually they're not going to hit my scent until they're halfway through the field. And so if they want to figure out where I ended up, they got to walk it all the way back, which bucks will for sure. But I feel like I get way more sits out of hunting the ground too, because it's not, like I said, you're not setting up, you're not tearing down, you're not like making sound. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I always say you never know what deer see you.
Yeah.
so
And that's what's,
yep.
There's a lot of truth to what you're saying about like getting married, or more likely, I guess, maybe to sit the same spot once you set up a stand. Because that's what I struggle with. It's like, oh, okay. Like we were even talking about like one of the areas I'm hunting, Seth, where we've talked about it's near the archery range. And it's like, oh, go on the east side. And it's like, well, that means I need to go in, take my stand down, and then bring it over there. And it's like, when am I going to do that? How much noise do I want to make? How am I going to go in there super early in the morning? Am I going to do it in the afternoon? Like, to me, it's like, well, or is it higher quality to go in there totally silent and give it another shot? I mean, I plan on moving, but like those are the things I have to go through my head where it's like justify how I'm going to do it, when I'm going to do it, instead of just being like, all right, I'm on the ground, and it's like, it feels much like, I love it where it's almost like not quite minimalist, but like it's a lot more free. I feel like you're saying you can move, you can adjust to what you're seeing.
Right.
And
just I don't even think it's the fact, maybe even the terminology is wrong. Like as far as married to a spot, because I don't feel like you're married to it. You want to be out of it, but it's like, to do it smart and to do it correct, you don't want to make noise.
Yeah.
So taking down that stand and moving that stand, it's not that you so much want to be in that tree. It's just what you're stuck with.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. Like
it's tough.
In fact, even the last time I was out, I was like, oh, I should move trees. Like I've sat this tree already. I should move trees.
Should move this tree over here.
No, I should move to
like
a different
Bob Ross.
tree. Oh my gosh,
this beautiful tree.
This other tree looks happier.
It's really
no, but
tree.
I was like, I can move this tree stand like 40 or 50 yards, and like I think like feeling like that would not be a bad idea. But then it's like, well, I'm gonna make a lot of noise doing that compared to me just shimmying up this tree. I can see the same distance, or I can see a lot of the area I'm interested in.
Right.
But it's like a constant trying to balance the work in it. I mean, part of that, I think that for me, like the saddle hunting, that's why that's so appealing to me, is like just go out, pick a tree, shimmy up, or just stay on the ground.
No.
Right. I've been thinking all this week, like I want to check out the saddle hunting. I haven't done it before, so obviously I can't say the pros and cons. But I love the idea that you can wear it.
Yep.
And I love the idea. The hardest part for, I think, most people, everybody, I would assume, is not the steps. It's when you get up to put that stand on the tree and that stand either opens up, or you're trying to get that strap around that tree and you're trying to either reach around the tree, or you're trying to use a ratchet strap and you're cranking away, or you're trying to use a cinch strap. And I mean, you got things hitting your stand. You have the sound of your stand opening up or closing. You've got your body hitting your stand. If you have a knife on your hip, you're clanking your stand, and it's like all those things could be eliminated if I saddle hunted. But in my mind, I think saddle hunting too, you're still going to need to be able to be tethered to that tree, still be able to move around, right? And you're still going to need to be able to draw back and shoot.
Yeah.
And if you want to move, you can't have a branch in the way of that tether either.
Well, and I can only imagine how hard it is out there when you only have like 5 trees to pick from. So.
There's like almost 7 in some spots.
Wow. So watch yourself,
guys.
guys.
You haven't been out here often.
I'm actually coming to Fargo for my anniversary trip in January, so.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people take vacations and like anniversary trips in Fargo. It's so beautiful.
It's amazing. Actually,
we could afford, okay?
It's actually going out there for the food and beer. It's amazing food and beer out there. So anyhow,
Yeah.
Anyhow, so yeah, I don't know. Actually, I think next year I'm gonna look into trying to get a saddle myself, because I like what like the hunting public, guys have pointed out, especially Zach, being the ability to shimmy up a tree if I need to or want to, and then the ability to shimmy down and just go if I need to go hit the ground. I like that. I like that versatility. I think I struggle, with getting a stand set up, and you're like, well, I set all this up, and now I just want to.
Dude, me opening morning.
And I have a hard time anyhow just sitting there, and I'm at a point, this is, talking about mindset, I'm also at a point where, like, because I have yet to see anything. Like, I've got a lot of activity on the cameras, but I have yet to see anything.
That was a question I was going to ask you guys.
Oh my gosh. Here's where I'm at. I'll just say it. I'm wanting to just go so aggressive that I want to kick something up and see it, just so that I know
Oh my gosh.
I'm where the deer at least are. So
Hey, no.
There's something to that, actually.
There's something huge to that. It's in season right now. I don't have my biggest target buck on camera. And when I have a free day where I'm like not thinking anything's going on, or even if there is, I know 3 or 4 different valleys that I will walk specifically to kick up that deer, so I at least have a ballpark idea where he's living right now. At least for future reference, even if I don't get to shoot him this year or in that spot. It's just, at some point, like you said, if you're not seeing deer, go kick some up. Quite literally, because if you're walking into an area like you guys have to hunt, and you can't see that far, or there's not a lot of activity, go walk around and try and kick up some deer. I mean, even if you can't see them, you know what I mean? Because that's more than what's happening in your stand right now, right? So at least you could get around an area where you've kicked up deer. Yeah. If you kick up deer once, they're not leaving for good.
Yeah.
There's reasons they're there.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's been one of the big kind of mysteries of where I've been hunting is I've, a couple weeks ago pulled some pictures and had a nice group of bucks and the big one that I would like to get if I have the opportunity. But the last couple weeks, they just, like, they're less and less on the camera that I've pulled. And we've had a lot of bird hunters out there. There's a lot of activity, a lot of pressure out there that I think that they've moved to another area. So I think moving forward, for me, it's a matter of shifting my focus from, like I've shown on the pictures I've sent, that west side of the road, to now I have to go to the northeast side that I think they've all moved to. I just got to start putting pressure in there, because at the very least, I know there's deer. I've eliminated a lot of areas where they're not. And now I feel like I'm just slowly working my way down to a smaller and smaller piece of land to where they've got to be.
That's what but I have a hard time with, like, say I look at trail cameras, right? I look at a month of information or 2 months of information, and there's stints where they're not on the trail camera for a week or two, right? Or a week and a half. But then there's stints where they're there like every single day, morning, evening. And so for me, and because you can't see very far, because I think that's a big part of it. For me, it's like, well, how much of it is putting, quote unquote, putting your time in? It's like, well, if they're not there every day, and then I expect to see them every day, and if I don't see them or something, then I move. You know what I mean? Like, trying to balance, like, just patience, but then being, proactive enough.
Yeah.
Because I could also see myself sitting in one spot and then moving, 100 yards, and I can sort of see where I was. And then it's like, oh, there they are the next day. And it's like, well, if I had maybe just waited. So I don't know. That's where I struggle with a little bit.
I feel like the difference for me versus you is I've been in a relatively small spot.
There's more bucks in Wisconsin.
There's also.
I have so much.
That.
Oh, that makes me so mad. Makes me so mad.
Hey, there's we won't go there. But I don't know.
I don't even have to be that good at hunting out here. I just have to show up. It's North Dakota. Obviously, that good.
Yeah, because you get
for all those
just
people
world record.
Just come on out.
Oh man, that's why I'm showing up at your door next year.
That's
Seth.
what we need. More out-of-staters.
Yes, I'm coming out.
Okay. Well, now. Since we're on the subject of
let's go.
Seeing deer,
Yeah,
I nerded out again. Okay.
Oh boy.
I'm ready.
Okay. Hey, I'm just saying, I like to I think about deer a lot, okay? So I literally wrote down, here's what it is.
All right.
Question to ask while hunting and not seeing deer. Questions to ask. Okay, you go into a spot, you don't see deer. What are some questions you should ask yourself if you don't see deer there?
Did I put out enough bait?
That's a good question, right? Because people are going out and they're not seeing deer. I go out and I don't see deer. And there should be a thought process behind, oh, they're just not here, right?
Yep.
So
what are the questions?
Okay, so number one, did they see me come in? I think a lot of people, and I just talked to a dude today at work about this. His dad hunts a spot, and this guy says, what you need to do is just get your time in, sit after sit after sit after sit, and eventually that deer will be there, right?
Yeah. I've heard John Dudley talk about like some 200 some hour math formula that he needs to put in to get these deer. And
Oh, really?
Like, that's, yeah.
Well,
if
Dudley said it, I'm in.
I'm like,
go back to the Olympics.
Anyhow, so seeing.
So here's
are the deer
deal.
seeing you?
So the first question I'm going to ask myself is, did they see me come in? Was my entry where I wasn't seen? Because, like, as I'm learning and as you guys have learned, deer, smart deer or pressured deer, which we're dealing with on and off, will bed where the most activity from humans would be, say, for entry, right?
Yep.
So you have to ask yourself, when I parked, I got out of my car and I headed down that trail, when I headed across that field, when I headed here or there, did I enter in a spot where these deer can see me? Okay, so that's one of the things I ask myself, because I go through this checklist because I don't like not seeing deer, so I got to figure out something. This whole thing is a guessing game. Like we've talked about that. It's like you got your best guess on where they are. You got your best guess on when they'll be where you want them to be, and it's all a guessing game. And you're adding up all the information you have to come up with the best guess you can get.
Sounds like fantasy football.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing I think of. And especially out here, like there, it might not be as bad. But I'm sure it happens. You know, you're saying you're walking down a trail or whatever. Maybe other people walk down the trail. Maybe they bed so they can see people walking down the trail. I don't know. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing is did they smell me? Number two. The second thing is, did they smell me? What is the wind direction? And this is the only reason I write these things down and bring these things up is because I went 10 years without asking what wind direction, what wind direction should I walk in on?
Yeah.
Like, I never asked myself, can they see me? I went to a spot, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I set up, and I don't think a lot of people are going, the wind's at my back while I'm walking in. Oh, I shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
They're just going, oh, my stand's over there. Right. So I think this needs to be said, even though it seems elementary.
Can I say something really quick?
Yep.
I totally
about wind?
agree.
Can I say something about wind?
Yep.
This is how bad I am right now in season. Are you ready for this? I was walking with my wife in downtown.
Here it
and
comes.
I felt the wind at my back, and I literally, my mind went, oh no.
People could smell me.
No, literally, my mind was like, oh, that's not good. My mind told me, it was like, nope, that's not a good feeling. Like, you don't want the wind at your back when you're walking somewhere. I was like, that is so weird.
But I would
true.
actually, I'm glad that you bring it up, because that is actually something that while I've heard the last few years of getting into hunting, it's only been this year that I've realized in talking with you and Seth, the magnitude of that aspect.
It's everything.
Because I've never honestly, the first 3 years, never once thought about that.
Really?
Once. Even though I had heard
the wind dictates where I go.
Nobody had ever really sat me down and explained the magnitude of that
how much
aspect.
that plays
into
so
I think
crazy.
that's something that really, like, anytime that I ever got hunting with my previous group, never once did anybody ever ask, well, what's the wind this day, and how does that dictate where we should go and how we should come in?
But
So-
without the question of if your only thing is like Seth is saying, like you're going into a spot. If it's hey, here's the field. The only
Exactly.
there's no like where's the bedding,
it's the only question is asked normally. I think for the majority of people is, oh, where are the deer going to eat, and where can I sit to shoot from?
Yeah,
I feel like that if you were to boil it down, is probably the only two questions people ask: where's the food source, and where can I get an easy shot off at?
on the food source.
Yeah, on the food source. So yeah, I think that's huge. Just coming from like looking at it from a new hunter perspective and kind of new to looking at these various aspects. That's huge, and that's something that I wish I had learned sooner. And I've learned a lot about this last year, and it's really helped.
Yeah. But it was, anyway, for me, sorry for interrupting, Seth, but for me, it was hilarious.
Oh, sorry.
Amen.
It hit the
This is
back
a
of my mind.
conversation. We're allowed
that's
we're
great.
allowed to interrupt.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, and that was, anyway, it struck me. And
Well, it's our
was-
podcast, so we can interrupt whenever we want.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm an honourary. third
Oh,
host. I'm just
what's that?
a third
We're
host.
losing you, Seth. You're breaking up.
guys.
But yeah,
Dude.
so what was it? Did they win me or
Yeah.
did they smell me
Yep.
coming in?
Do they smell me? Yeah, because everyone, we've heard it, and I didn't hear it when I was younger, but it's, deer see with their eyes. I've seen deer wind me from, I'm talking like 800 yards away. They look over because they smell you and they're gone. Like I've had coyotes do the same thing. Like you can blow out an entire block of timber just by walking in and having your scent blow that way.
Yeah,
Like that's just the plain and simple truth.
That's
And
hard.
another thing, like we were looking at your hunt today, Dusty, and it was like one of the things that I've learned and that a guy has to understand too is like, say you're like walking, the wind's say coming from the north, right?
Yep.
And you're walking out to that west point, right?
Yep.
So what you'd want to do is you'd want to enter on the south side of that point,
Yep.
right? And you'd want to walk north because as soon as you hit a trail going east to west in there, you want to be able to set up on the downwind side of that trail without ever walking on that trail. And that's like stuff I never thought of when I was younger. Like a doe is probably going to, there's a possibility of a doe or whatever else walking before a buck walks there. So it's like little things like that. Like where do you have to walk to get to check your trail camera?
Yeah.
Are you crossing the trail that you're hunting to go check your trail camera across from your stand? Because you just like the tree that was there? Like it's stuff like that deer pick up on that, it's like it ruins spots because you just never thought of it.
Is this a
right?
jab at Ethan?
No, hey,
What?
actually, I got better at
No,
that.
not at all.
I've sat in my stand and looked at my trail cameras from where I'm sitting and gone, I'm not going to go get them.
Instead of going to the trail
Yeah,
cam
like checking
first
them
and
and
then
then
sit in the
sit in
stand
the
and
stand
wondering why no deer came.
It's
Yeah,
true. No, I've shown better restraint.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll get back to the list.
All right.
Let me nerd out here a little
All
longer.
right. Yes.
Okay. So the first one was, did they see me come in? Out here, it is a huge problem for me. I can have the biggest bucks in the world on trail camera. I can visually see them doing what they do. But out here, it's so open. You can watch them do it every day, and you wouldn't be able to get to them. Like they bed and they live, and those big smart bucks. Like when I got done with my hunt the other day, this big giant buck is walking through the middle of basically a cow pasture when there's giant valleys with trees going down to the water. But he decides to walk through all this cow pasture right out in the open to go get a drink. He won't go down in the valley that I'm in. And I'm going, ugh. Yeah. But but there's stuff that's in those valleys. There's places for other things to hide. Like when he's up there,
he sees.
He can see, he can smell, and nobody's. He might not doing that during rifle season, but someone's probably gonna have to show him it's rifle season. I don't know. Maybe I will. Hopefully.
Yeah.
But anyways, so it's just interesting. It's a huge thing, especially out here, is sight. But I think you need to keep that in mind anywhere you're at.
Yeah.
And this list is kind of like, okay, so it's did they see you come in? Then it's
Yep.
did they smell you?
Yep.
Do you have the wind in your face or a crosswind that is not going to where you think the deer are going to come from?
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yep.
Because a lot of times you'll be going in and your wind is, a crosswind, so you're good getting like in there, but then is that wind going to where you're hoping they're coming from? Like that's one thing you got to ask. And then are you making too much noise? Like when I'm getting into different spots and when I set up a trail camera on different things, when you're making that noise and stuff, deer get curious. Like even if they're not coming because it's danger, deer are curious
Yeah.
to what is making noise where they live, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, how many times you set up a trail camera and like there's a deer straight in front of it? Of course, your scent's there, so they're probably sniffing that too. But they're curious as to what's going on. I've been breaking branches in trees, not in rut, and had deer like just inquisitively come
Yeah.
to see what's going on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
You're not scaring a deer every time, but when you're making noise and all these different things, and they seem like small things, but when you're out there not seeing deer, you might need to start nitpicking what you're doing so that you can maybe start seeing deer. So that's the third thing on my list is, am I making too much noise when I'm in here? Like, and that's part of the ground game. What I love is like, I can make as little noise as I want. There's nothing that says I have to clear a shooting lane. I have to open a stand. I have to break branches. I can be as quiet as I want. And that is part of the reason why I went to ground game. So, so did they smell you? Did they see you? Did they hear you?
Okay.
The next one is, are you overhunting it? If you're in there, you need to ask yourself the question, how many times have I been in here? Am I overhunting it? Say you got a trail camera in there. There's a bunch of deer on it, and then the deer peter out. Nothing's changed except for you being in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're in there too much. Like that's a legitimate thing. The spots we're hunting right now, and some like a phenomenal spot that we started hunting earlier this year, we got 3 sits out of it before the deer were like, nope, we're not going to be here anymore. We never loosed an arrow. We never, it was sheerly off of nothing changed except for the fact that our scent was in there. And I know that because when we stink and walk in, the first time you see 30 deer, second time you see less and less and less until there's nothing in there. And you've never acted aggressively like a predator per se, air quotes over here. You can't see them. But they're not comfortable with that smell in there that much. They were fine. They were still coming the first and second time, but then it petered out. And that I know is because we've been in and out of there. Our scent is in there. They've heard us, I'm sure. We have to leave at some point, right? So you have to ask yourself, if you haven't done or don't believe one of the first 3 things has happened, you have to ask yourself, have I overhunted it? Some deer are going to put up with it. Most deer aren't.
Yeah.
So how many times have you been into this spot, So that's another thing you're going to ask. And the last thing that I came up with is, are they just not there? Or are you there? Are you there and they're not there that day? Because some days you're going to go there. It's a great spot for deer and the deer travel through there, but they're just not going to be there. But if you can go through this list and say, okay, I haven't overhunted it. I've come in with a solid wind, right?
Yep.
I'm not making a bunch of noise getting in. Smell, it's inevitable you're going to leave it in there. But if you can safely go through like a semi checklist and say, yeah, you know what? That was a questionable wind. That was a pretty bad wind actually, but I really just wanted to get out. And you can look to that and be like, hey, that might be one of the causes. If you can, like, this for me is so I don't have to not see deer. That's why I kind of like ponder these things.
Yeah.
Is because I enjoy doing these things and I enjoy asking the questions. I mean, like you listen to some of these guys on the like Dan Infalt, he goes, okay, well, I saw that buck come from there and he killed the buck, right?
Yep.
He killed him. It's great. He's got him in the truck. You know what he does? He goes and he says, where was he bedded? Why was he bedded there? So even though he killed that deer, he still wants to find out. He still asks the question.
Yeah.
And like with me, I ponder these things. I ask the question. And like when you guys are out there and you're not seeing deer, I think a good idea to do is start asking yourself those questions. because when you're up in your tree and you're like, I haven't seen a deer. This is my third sit. What's going on here?
Yeah.
You can't just blame it on the fact that there's just not deer there. You just can't blame it on the fact that you can't see enough. You know, it's like,
Wait, I can't?
not every time.
Dang it.
Not every time. No,
Dang
but,
it.
But I mean, does that make
No.
sense? Because if you're not asking these questions, then you're not really assessing.
Yeah.
Like, you're not getting in touch with reality of, I could be ruining the spot. You have to be like, okay, yeah, I've sat here too many times. You can't be like, I've been so good about my smell. I've been so good about my sound. No, you know what? You have to be like, yeah, I've hunted here 3 or 4 times. I need to move on because I haven't seen a deer, you know, because I'm sure it's happening to everybody. It's happened to me like my whole life, you know? So I think, no, but seriously, the guys who sit the stands like that, they've sat year after year after year and they don't see deer. You have to be like,
Yeah.
I'm not the best hunter in the world. I don't set up the most perfect stands. I don't hunt a perfect wind. I don't have perfect scent control, and you need to move on.
Yo.
Go find some deer that haven't been pressured. Go find some deer that haven't smelled you or heard you or seen you. You know?
Yeah.
Because it seems to work.
Sounds like a trip
You
to
know?
North Dakota next year.
Yeah,
Ethan.
North Dakota, here
Oh.
we come. Woo!
Oh boy,
Oh,
man.
man. Well, I think that is
You boys don't know how busy I am.
a great spot to end this episode on, is with those questions, because I think that gives us a lot. That gives me a lot
That
to
gives,
now
yeah, that
process
gives
through.
me plenty. Yep.
And kind of refiguring where and how I'm going about this. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, again, like you were kind of asking like where we're at mentally too, and it's like, oh, I kind of want more spots, but it's hard to go away from what you have set up, so to speak,
Yeah.
and like the areas where
Right.
you feel like you're starting to figure it out as far as like your entry and all
Yeah.
that stuff, and then it's like, well, you're not seeing deer, so maybe something
time to
else
move.
is a good idea.
Hey, like, what are you going to,
yeah.
you're going to, at least if you go to another spot, you know, you might learn something more,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like, you can't see less deer, right? So
That's
make a move, you know?
that's true.
Get someplace you can see too. I mean, we're talking about like how
Easy
fantastic
for
it
the
is
guy
out
from
here.
North Dakota to
Unreal,
say.
Seth.
You know
It's
what?
so
You know what?
insensitive.
You know what,
That's so
Dusty? No,
insensitive
no,
to us.
stop.
I'm offended.
Both of you,
Yeah.
Stop. No,
I'm
both of you
triggered.
Stop right now. No, because let me say this.
Go to the top of the trees.
No, your third set ended up someplace where you could see.
Dustin's did, yeah.
Yeah, mine did.
Yeah.
Right. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. So if it is so great to see and be able to see, go sit someplace where you can see, catch some movement, and then try it. I mean, or not catch movement. Now you have
Yeah.
this giant area where there's no deer walking through,
Move on.
and that's a sign too.
Keep on
You know?
trucking.
Keep on a trucking.
moving.
All right, cool. Well, we're probably going to wrap it up.
Yeah, 'cause
I think
I've
that's
got a list of stuff. I mean,
I
well,
know.
I'm
I
just
can
kidding.
hear. No, I can hear your paper
feel-
stacks
Hold on.
in the
I
background.
know. Look at all
I mean,
that.
there's
Yeah,
just
that's
a few more
riveting.
items
Oodles
that
and
I
oodles
wanna
and
check
notes.
off here.
Riveting audio. Thank you for that.
Dude, I will. I'm gonna have to start
man.
a podcast or something.
Yeah, you might
You
have to.
should.
There's
You can, run,
so many notes.
you can run your solo. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Dustin, where can they find us?
Pretty much all social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You can check out the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Castbox.
There's a whole bunch.
and
So
a
you
whole
can-
bunch of others. We have a
Yeah.
link in our social media pages, so check that
Yeah.
out. Give us a like, dislike, comment. Feel free. Anything is welcomed at this point. We just appreciate you listening to this point
Yeah.
in the
So
podcast.
much.
Hopefully you learned
So
something.
much.
I know I did, and now I have to go rethink through everything I've been doing. Thanks a lot, Seth.
Great. Wonderful. Awesome. Well, good luck,
Do
everybody.
what I can.
Yeah. Continue good luck to everybody on their seasons, and we'll keep updating you guys on ours as we go through.
And thank you,
As
Seth,
we
for
kill
joining
stuff,
us.
As
we're
we
killing this week.
slaughter.
Cold front coming in.
Yes, cold front coming in.
So true. This next
It's gonna be
weekend's
good.
Gonna be good.
We're gonna have
Real
some good stories coming up, folks.
Yeah, guaranteed. From
Sure.
Seth, at least.
Yes. All right, guys. Till next time.
Peace out.
Peace.